When the symptom shouts, it seldom announces itself with courtesy. It comes, as you know, like a sharp knock on the door of the body. Heat, pressure, a tightening in the chest, a spinning in the head, or like a headline racing through the mind, writing its own dire predictions. In that instant, the mind would scan. What is this? How bad is it? What did I do? What will happen? It runs ahead into tomorrow. It runs back into yesterday. And it fails. Oh, how it fails. To stand still in the only place where help is, here. We all know that surge. And we also know the old habit that leaps to argue with the body, to fix it, to bribe it, to bargain, to battle it into submission. Now, of course, we have discovered over and over that this arguing does not bring dominion. It brings a new round of fear. So, in that first second, and I do mean first, before the storm gathers its arguments, our work is not to conquer sensation. Our work is not to get clever with symptoms, not to outshout the body with metaphysical slogans. Our work is to remember. The instruction is simple enough to be practiced in a crowded bus or a midnight room. Be not afraid. God is. Not loudly, not to persuade God, not to impress your neighbor, quietly, inwardly, with that little turning of attention that says, this moment belongs to God. We do not fight the body and we do not obey the body. We turn to the one who is our life. Be still and know. Be not afraid. God is. Let me say this gently, but clearly. This is not positive thinking. This is not denial. It is not suppression of sensation. It is the withdrawal of consent from fear's claim to power. Fear comes with an argument. I have power. I can govern you. I can forecast your future. And we have been trained by the world to nod to that claim. In this practice, we refuse the premise. We grant no reality, no law, no authority to any power apart from God. There are not two powers in this universe as there seems to be. There is not spirit and something else. There is spirit alone. God is. And in the first second of alarm, that is what we acknowledge, not with clenched fists, but with a relaxed recognition. You will notice that the body keeps talking. Let it. You will notice the mind keeps offering pictures. Let it. Denial is an argument with shadows. We are not called to argue. We are called to abide. The little inner word, be not afraid. God is not a charm. It is a doorway. Step through it and you find yourself in the secret place where the only presence is God, where the only activity is the activity of spirit. Say it once, say it twice. Don't force it. Let it say itself in you. Be not afraid. God is. And in proportion as you rest there, even for a breath or two, the fever of panic begins to lose the oxygen of your belief. Fear will try again. It will say, but what if? It will paint catastrophe upon the wall of imagination. Our answer is not a counter-picture of rosy outcomes. Our answer is to return to presence. Who is here? God is here. Who lives me? God lives me. What power is operative? The law of God alone. Do you see? We are not moving pieces on a chessboard of matter. We are standing still in the awareness of one. And standing still in one, we find ourselves no longer obedient to a second. Now, you will ask, can I do this in an elevator, in a hospital room, in traffic? Yes, that is exactly where it must be done. It is what we do with this that bears fruit, not what we talk about. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. If in that first second you make yourself available, just that inward nod, that little consent, truth begins to lift you above the battlefield of opposites. The body may still report. We are not startled. We let it report, but not rule. We rest in God's government. If conditions permit, close the eyes for a breath or two. If not, let the lids be open. The practice is inward. On the in-breath, not as a technique, but as a reminder, here within, be not afraid. On the out-breath, God is. Let the shoulders drop. Let the tongue soften. Let the mind's movie roll by without buying a ticket. If the wave of sensation rises, we are not volunteers to its story. We are witnesses to God's presence. In other words, the body may ring the bell, but we do not run the house by bells. We live and move and have our being in God. Well, of course, you will discover that this becomes easier with use. It becomes a spiritual reflex. The first few times the mind may protest, "You must do something," and we are doing something, more than something. We are doing the one thing needful, remembering the one. Keep it quiet, keep it within you. Go and tell no man. This is not performance, it is communion, and you will find, not because I say so, but because Spirit proves itself, that the panic which used to gallop all the way to disaster begins to stumble at the threshold. Why? Not because you have grown strong in yourself, but because you have ceased to feed a second power. So we begin here, not with strategies to conquer the flesh, not with speeches to silence the nerves, but with a simple inner faithfulness in the first second of fear. Be not afraid. God is. Let us make that our opening posture, our first turning, our first light. Everything else follows from that, and even as we step out of this room into a world that delights to offer us a dozen emergencies before breakfast, we carry one inner word: be not afraid. God is. Now, if we are honest, and this work requires that gentle honesty with ourselves, we will notice why fear sounds so convincing. It does not present itself as hysteria. It presents itself as logic. It says, yes, yes, God is, but there is also disease. There is also chemistry and age and prognosis and statistics. That is the hidden premise beneath the rush of alarm, the belief in God and something else. Two powers, spirit and matter, grace and chance. In that instant, without announcing it to ourselves, we have enthroned a rival. And once a rival sits on the throne of our attention, fear seems reasonable. Let us question this, not to win an argument, but to see. If God is omnipresent, where would a second power exist? If God fills all space, what space is left for a contrary law? If God is the only life, whose life is it that disease could touch? If God is the one activity, what activity is left for an opposing force to claim? You see, fear is the testimony of an assumption. It is the heart saying, I have divided the kingdom. But the kingdom is not divided. There are not two powers in this world as there seems to be. The Master did not teach, my Father and a competitor. He revealed, Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father in heaven. And if no power exists apart from the Father, then what is fear reporting? Only our momentary consent to a fiction. Now, I am not asking you to pretend the body is silent when it is ringing bells. The body may report, let it report. The senses may light up with sensation, let them. That is their function, to report. But a reporter does not make the law, a reporter relays. The body is not a legislator, it does not write statutes, it does not sit as judge. It is a clerk bringing a file to the bench. The law is God, the government is God, the authority is God. In other words, sensation is not destiny. Sensation is not a decree. It is a letter on the desk. We may read it without surrendering to it. We may hear it without bowing to it. How then does fear gain authority? By our silent Amen. We do not always speak it with words, but the heart nods. Yes, this is power. Yes, this has jurisdiction. Yes, this can determine my tomorrow. And in that nod we have prayed to a second power. Fear, in that moment, is a form of false prayer. It is a meditation on a rival presence. It recites, without beads and without hymns, a liturgy of resignation to matter. We rehearse outcomes. We consult oracles of memory. We hold conference with prognosis. And then we wonder why peace is absent. Well, of course, peace is absent. We have left the secret place and taken our seat before another altar. I do not say this to shame us. I say it to unmask the mechanics of panic, so that we may withdraw its oxygen. See how it works, and you are already freer. The instant we notice, I am running the world, as if there were two powers, that very noticing is grace at the door. It is the Father knocking, not to scold, but to invite us home to the undivided. The answer is not to crush the symptom, nor to scold the body for reporting. The answer is to refuse, quietly and inwardly, to confer a crown upon a claimant that has no lineage. Dominion returns not by wrestling with the sense picture, but by removing our recognition from its supposed throne. We must ask again. Socrates would keep us honest this way. If God is the only life, what life can be sick? If God is the only law, what statute can condemn us? If God is the only cause, what effect can stand independent of that cause? If you can find a square inch of existence where God is not, then perhaps you can park a second power there. But if you cannot, if even reason bows to the omnipresence of spirit, then fear has nothing to stand on except our acquiescence. Withdraw that acquiescence, and you will feel the floor drop out from fear's arguments. It is important that we see the distinction between sensation and authority, because many have stumbled here. They think that to be spiritual is to feel no pain, to have no quickened pulse, to know no startle. That is not spirituality, that is anesthesia. The spiritual life is not numbness, it is government from within. It is the recognition that the thermometer can read, but it cannot decree. The clock can measure, but it cannot command. The weather can change, but it cannot authorize your peace. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. What casts the shadow? Not symptoms, not forecasts, not public opinion. God alone. So, when the body shouts, when the mind prints its bold headlines, watch what the heart is doing with its allegiance. Where is your fealty? To whom do you yield the scepter in that moment? Fear gains authority not because it has any, but because we place the ring on its finger. We take off the signet of our trust in God and lend it to suggestion. And then, of course, the edicts begin to issue, but the ring is ours to reclaim. The signet belongs to the One. The moment we take it back, not with bravado, but with quiet remembrance, the edicts of fear are found to be unsigned. Do you see now why the little inner word, "Be not afraid"? God is who is not a slogan, but a change of government. It is the peaceful transfer of power from the senses back to spirit. It is the heart revoking a permission it never should have granted. And immediately, though the body may continue its report, the spell begins to break. Not because we have conquered a force, but because we have exposed the absence of any force but God. It isn't that God heals disease. It is only that disease has no power. It isn't that God overcomes fear. It is that fear has borrowed our consent, and without it cannot stand. Therefore, our practice is simple in theory and exacting in discipline. Catch the moment of consent. Catch the nod. Catch the inner amen as it attempts to attach itself to a second power, and then, without drama, turn, withdraw the belief, return the throne. Remember the One. You will notice the dignity that returns with that remembrance. Panic is noisy because it is insecure. The One is quiet because it is all. In that quiet, dominion is felt, not the dominion of a person strong-arming a crisis, but the dominion of God revealed as the life we are. We shall go further into the sanctuary in a moment, but for now let this be clear. Fear operates by persuading us to accept a second power. Dominion begins when we refuse the premise. Let the body report, let the mind produce its films. We do not buy the ticket, we do not crown a claimant, we abide. And in abiding, we discover again that the kingdom is not divided, The throne is not shared. The presence is not threatened. Be not afraid. God is. Now let us enter the heart of this, because it is not enough to say a phrase. We must understand what we are doing when we turn to it. Be not afraid. God is. Notice the two movements as natural as the opening and closing of a door. First, be not afraid. That is not a command to your nerves to stop trembling. It is the dismissal of fear's claim to jurisdiction. It is the refusal to hear a case that has no standing in this court. Be not afraid says, in effect, you have no authority here. Then comes the second movement, God is. Not God will be, not God please be, not God appear, but God is, present here. The only presence, the only power, the only law. One half closes the gate to the intruder. The other opens the inner door to the host. Together they constitute sanctuary. How do we say it? Not with clenched jaw or furrowed brow. Not as if we were trying to push back a tide with a teaspoon. We say it as a turning, quietly, within. We let the words be less a shout and more a bow. Be not afraid. God is. If the body is loud, let the words be soft. If the room is noisy, let the words be inward. There is no technique here to master, no trick to perform. It is as if you were on a busy street and you slipped into a little side chapel. The city continues, but you have stepped into an atmosphere where the only presence acknowledged is God. That is the secret place. That is what these words do when they are not used as magic but as doorway. Now, you will notice that I am not urging you to make the words do something. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. If, in a fit of willpower, you try to pound this phrase into the mind until the symptom yields, you have turned it into a club and lost its nature. The purpose is not to force a result. The purpose is to yield to reality. Yield is an unpopular word in a world that worships control, but in the spirit it is the great word. We yield our belief in a second power. We yield our private government. We yield our timelines and our arguments, and in that yielding, we feel the presence that requires no argument. Be not afraid. God is. Well then, you ask, how often should I say it? As often as needed, and as gently as possible. Repetition is not superstition when it is the act of abiding. Does the branch tire of remaining in the vine? Does the fish tire of remaining in the sea? It is not wearisome to return again and again to our natural atmosphere. It is life. We say it, and if the mind runs off to forecasts, we say it again. Not with impatience, never wrench the heart, but with the same tenderness with which you would guide a child by the hand back to safety. Each return is a fresh consent. Each return is a renewed refusal to divide the kingdom. Each return is a little Sabbath in the midst of traffic. Some will ask, because we have all been students of slogans, is there power in the words? There is no power in words as such. There is power in God. The words are a finger pointing, a bell reminding, a key turning. The power is the presence to which they turn us. We could as well say no words at all and rest in the felt isness, but because we have trained ourselves to be distracted, these few words simplify our consent. They are simple enough to carry into an elevator, into a boardroom, into a kitchen where the pot boils over and a child cries. They do not require posture or incense. They require only willingness. Be not afraid. God is. Notice also how the phrase educates the senses without condemning them. The first part, be not afraid, acknowledges that fear has knocked, that sensations have presented themselves. We do not scold the senses for ringing the bell. We simply do not hand them the keys. The second part, God is, establishes government. It is the unspoken reminder that the law of our being is not subject to headlines, instruments, or public opinion. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Where is that place? Seated at your own kitchen table. walking down your own hallway, lying awake in your own bed at 2 in the morning when the mind would like to rehearse calamity. The secret place is not a location. It is an atmosphere of recognition. God is. If, in saying it, you find yourself trying to bring God in to fix a situation, stop and smile at yourself. That is not it. God is not brought in. God is. We are the ones who have stepped out mentally into a wilderness of two powers. This little word leads us back. There is no petition in it, no bargaining, no appeal to a far-off deity. It is the recognition of what eternally is and has been and will be: presence, life, love, intelligence, law. And as you rest there, even a breath or two, you will feel the difference between forcing and yielding. Forcing tires, yielding refreshes. Forcing keeps us in the argument. Yielding lifts us into the silence that ends the argument. Do not worry if, at first, nothing seems to change. We are not working for appearances. We are consenting to reality. You will find, because grace proves itself, that panic loses the backing of your belief. The films continue to flicker without drawing you into the plot. The body may still recite its letter, but the court does not convene. And sometimes, because we have withdrawn the only power fear ever had, our consent, the body's report quiets. Sometimes it does not, and yet peace presides anyway. That is when you will know you have found the sanctuary and not a technique, because the peace is not purchased by outcome. It is the shadow of the Almighty. Practice this privately. Keep it within. Go and tell no man. Not because we are hiding something, but because the chatter of self-congratulation coarsens the ear. When truth uses you, you will know, by the humility that descends. You will know because gratitude will rise, not for an effect, but for the living fact that God is available on earth today. And then, when the next knock comes, and it will come because the world will offer us many opportunities to forget, you will find that your hand knows the way to the door, your foot knows the path to the side chapel, and your heart knows the words that open it. Be not afraid. God is. Let us then make this our immediate sanctuary. In the instant of alarm, retreat within gently, without fanfare. Close your eyes if you may, keep them open if you must. Inwardly, let the words turn you from the sense testimony to the presence, and linger a moment. Not long, just long enough to feel the argument fade and the assurance rise. Not assurance in a future, but assurance in the one who is the only presence here. This is the beginning of dominion. Not dominion over matter, not dominion over a body, but the dominion of God revealed as the life we are. Be not afraid. God is. Now we must be very clear, because here is where many of us have suffered needlessly. We have thought that spirituality required us to pretend that nothing hurts, that nothing shakes, that nothing stirs in the nerves. That is denial, and denial is an argument with a messenger. The senses are messengers. They bring a report. We do not punish the messenger for arriving at the door. We let the body report, but we do not let it rule. We are not pretending that the sensation is not felt. We are refusing to interpret it as power, as law, or as prophecy. We are not asked to say, there is no pain. We are asked to remember, there is no second power. Denial tightens the fists. Denial tries to outshout the bell. Denial says to the thermometer, you cannot read, and to the calendar, you cannot count, and then wonders why the inner conflict increases. Withdrawal of belief is a different thing entirely. It is the quiet revocation of authority. It is the judge who receives the clerk's file and says, this case has no standing in this court, and lays it aside. Sensation may present itself. Thought may produce its pictures, memory may supply its history, but none of these write the law of your being. The law is God. The government is God. The authority is God. What then is our inner posture in the moment? It is very simple, and simplicity is mercy in a storm. First, notice. Here is a wave in the body. Here is a rush in the mind. No drama, no scolding. Second, pause. Give yourself one breath's Sabbath in which you refuse to sign any decree. Third, stop the story. The mind will begin at once to write a chapter. This means it will become, "It happened before." Gently remove the pen from its hand. Fourth, let the story fall away. Do not edit it, do not refute it. Let it drop as you would let a child's kite go when it is tangled in the tree. Fifth, return to presence. Be not afraid. God is. Not to ward off a foe, not to pull a lever, but to resume your true address. And if the story tries again, repeat the sequence. Notice, pause, drop the story, return. Be not afraid. God is. This is not a psychological trick. It is a spiritual act. Withdrawal of belief is the soul reclaiming its allegiance. It is the cessation of a false prayer to a false God. When we withdraw belief, we are not saying that matter does not appear. We are saying that matter cannot decree. Can a clay pot ordain the life of the potter? Can a shadow command the sun? Can a report from the senses establish a law that binds the life that is God? If God is the only cause, what uncaused effect is there to fear? If God is the only life, what life is it that a pulse could threaten? If God is the one presence, where is the scene of a rival's activity? We withdraw our consent from the suggestion that there is a second statute in the universe by which our well-being may be condemned. We yield the scepter back to the one. And what do we yield to as we yield from the false? We yield to health, harmony, wholeness, completeness, perfection, infinite good, not as baubles we clutch, not as personal possessions that can be lost, but as the nature of God revealing itself as our life. Health, not as muscles and bones behaving, but as the integrity of life expressing. Harmony, not as a lucky arrangement of circumstances, but as the music of spirit ordering its own. Wholeness, not as parts well aligned, but as the indivisible presence of the one. Completeness, not as an inventory checked off, but as nothing lacking in God. Perfection, not as flawlessness measured by microscopes, but as the isness of God, immaculate, unopposed, unthreatened. Infinite good, not as a pile to be guarded, but as the endless outpouring of being itself. We do not take these to ourselves, we yield ourselves to them, and they bear witness, in their own ways, that government has been restored within. In practice, this will be as ordinary as your kitchen and as holy as a sanctuary. The child cries in the night, a heat is on his brow. You feel that old surge of alarm. Notice, pause, quiet the story, return, be not afraid. God is. The heart misfires for a moment in a crowded shop. The mind flashes a headline. The clock on the wall seems to speak. Notice, pause, quiet the story, return, be not afraid. God is. A letter arrives with difficult figures. The stomach tightens. The breath shortens. Notice, pause, quiet the story, return, be not afraid. God is. You see, we are not immobilized by this. On the contrary, this restores poise so that wisdom can guide the next outward step without panic. Instruments may read, thermometers may measure, calendars may turn, but none of these have the government. The government is upon his shoulder. Some have asked, but if I do not interpret, am I not being careless? No, recognition is not negligence. We are not abdicating attention. We are restoring its direction. When we abide, the wisdom of God acts as law unto the members of the body and as guidance unto the affairs of the day. Outwardly, we may do what is needful. Inwardly, we stay in the secret place. We do not entrust our life to a clock, a number, or a rumor. We entrust our life to the life that is God. And from that trust proceed the quiet decisions that are right for that hour. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. It will move you to lie down or to rise, to call or to be still, to speak or to be silent. But before all that, it will establish dominion within, and that is the end of panic. As fear loosens its grip when we cease to feed it with belief, we will find that two inner cleansings become possible and necessary because they keep the channel unblocked. The first is forgiveness, not as a moral performance, but as the removal of inner resistance that keeps the heart tight. Unforgiveness is a secret ally of fear. It says, I will withhold love, and in withholding, it convinces us that withholding is possible. Forgiveness restores the flow of grace. The second is gratitude, not for outcomes, not for changes in the report, but for spirit itself present now. Gratitude tunes the ear to God's government before any evidence appears. These we will take up because they are the daily housekeeping by which the atmosphere of one power is maintained in us. So remember this distinction and practice it until it becomes your spiritual reflex. We do not suppress sensation. We withdraw belief from its supposed authority. We let the body report. We do not allow it to legislate. We let the mind offer its films. We do not buy tickets to the theater. We rest in God's government. And each time the bell rings, each time the paper slides under the door, we answer not with arguments, but with the inner word that returns us to center. Be not afraid. God is. Now, as we step further into the sanctuary, let us take up forgiveness, not as a virtue we perform to be admirable, but as a law of God by which the channel is cleared and grace may be felt. Forgiveness is not a medal on the chest. It is the removal of a stone from the stream so the water may run. When the symptom flares and panic knocks, notice what else rises with it. Old resentments, old names, old faces, old scenes. The mind is quick to open a file. If I had not, if life were not so unfair. And if we listen, we will hear something subtler still. Anger at the body for daring to speak, blame toward a doctor or a report, bitterness toward a calendar or a circumstance, accusations, little and large, that harden the heart and keep fear credible. In withholding love in those moments, we are not punishing them. We are obstructing ourselves. By not cleansing ourselves of these emotions, we withhold forgiveness. And in withholding forgiveness, we are withholding the love of God. The law of God is love. Forgiveness is one of those qualities of God, and when it is flowing, grace has an unobstructed avenue. Now, of course, we are not pretending that offenses never occurred, or that pain was never felt. To forgive is not to rewrite history. It is to release the belief that history has authority over the present. To forgive is not to excuse. It is to withdraw a crown we have placed upon a second power, the power of persons, the power of conditions, the power of our own memories to legislate today. Resentment is a secret agreement that there is another power that can bind us. Forgiveness is the emotional consent to our own mantra, God is. There are not two powers in this world, as there seems to be. There are not two governments in this inner kingdom. When we forgive, we are not elevating an offender. We are elevating the one. How shall we practice this in the very moment when the nerves are quick and the mind is noisy? Gently, honestly, without show. If you can forgive, forgive. If the face appears before you, your own included, say within, without drama, I release you in God. I take back my belief that you have power over my life. Be not afraid. God is. If you can forgive, forgive now and let the current flow. But if you cannot, and there are hours when the heart is too tangled for its own hands, do not force. Yield. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. Say, Father, forgive them, forgive me, I do not know what I do. Do not make that a sermon, make it a surrender. Father, forgive them, forgive me, I do not know what I do. That is not a performance. It is a door. It admits the only presence that can do the forgiving when our capacity seems small. Remember the Master in his extremity. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He did not consult his injuries, he consulted the Father. If we cannot forgive, we can ask the Father to forgive as us, and then be quiet long enough for the hardness to soften. Some will ask, but isn't this letting people or circumstances off the hook? There is no hook in God. There is government, yes. There is law, yes. But none of this is administered by the resentments of our private courts. If thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, the instruction is not, clench harder and mumble a truth. It is, go, be reconciled. Now, sometimes the reconciliation is an outward act. More often it is an inward release that changes the atmosphere. In the presence of that release, wisdom will show you whether any outward step is to be taken. But first, restore government within. I had a letter once from a man who lived in a constant round of symptoms that visited him like unwelcome callers. He had studied, prayed, recited, and yet each flare brought him back to the same threshold of panic. We spoke, and in the speaking he mentioned, almost as an aside, a brother with whom he had not spoken in 8 years. Well, of course, he said, that has nothing to do with my body. And there you have it, 2 powers. He began quietly, not with a phone call, but with a prayer. Father, forgive him, forgive me, I do not know what I do. He spoke it whenever the flare came, not as a charm, but as a consent to love. He would not argue with the body. He would not argue with the past. He would not argue with his own incapacity to feel tender. He yielded. He reported weeks later that the strangest thing had happened. The panic ended before the symptom did. Then the symptom quieted. Then, one morning, the call was made, and there was reconciliation. He did not credit the words. He knew. He had removed an inner obstruction, and in the cleared channel, grace could testify as peace, as guidance, as adjustment. Let us be inclusive and honest here. We have all held something. We have all tightened around memory, around a name, around a diagnosis, around a date circled on a calendar. So with us, it is in proportion that we release, we are released. Withhold forgiveness, and we withhold the love of God from our own atmosphere. Extend forgiveness, or at least ask the Father to extend it through us, and we discover that fear's voice grows faint because its witness has been dismissed. You see the link? Resentment implies arrival. Forgiveness reaffirms one. Resentment says, that person, that event, that body, that clock has power. Forgiveness says, be not afraid. God is. There is a tender application of this that some of us overlook. Forgive the body, not as if it were guilty and we are magnanimous, but as withdrawal of blame from a reporter who has been made a governor. Body, I release you from my anger. I release myself from resenting you. You are the temple through which life testifies. You are not a lawgiver. Be not afraid. God is. And then turn the same mercy upon yourself. I forgive me for the hours I have believed in 2 powers. Father, forgive me. I do not know what I do. You will feel the shoulders drop, the breath lengthen, the heart unclench. That is not hypnosis. That is the flow of law. The government is upon his shoulder. Where the law of love governs, fear has no statute to cite. Practice this privately. Keep it within. Go and tell no man. Not because we are hiding virtue, but because silence deepens the root. Tomorrow, or before you are out of this room, when the bell rings and the paper slides under the door, begin with sanctuary. Be not afraid. God is. And then, if any face or scene rises to claim a second power, release it. If you can, forgive. If you cannot, Ask the Father and rest. You will find, sooner than you think, that forgiveness is not a taskmaster, but a river. Once it finds its way, it runs of its own accord, and it carries with it the debris that made the channel narrow. In that widened stream, grace moves freely, and where grace moves freely, fear cannot build its case. Forgiveness dissolves the inner resistance that kept fear credible. It makes room, oh, it makes room for the felt government of God. Be not afraid. God is. Now let us turn to gratitude, because after the heart has loosened its grip through forgiveness, the air is fresh for praise. Not the noisy praise of bargaining, but the quiet recognition of what is. We have, many of us, been taught a kind of transactional gratitude. If this improves, then I will thank. If that eases, then I will sing. Or, worse still, we offer thanks as a payment on account, as if to sweeten heaven for a future favor. That is not gratitude, that is commerce. Gratitude is not wages paid to a deity for services rendered. Gratitude is the acknowledgement of presence before, during, and after any report. True gratitude is for spirit, not for outcomes. For reality, not for appearances. For the one, not for the latest letter the senses have slid under the door. How did the Master show us? He lifted his eyes and thanked the Father before a stone was moved, before a man stirred, before a crowd understood. Gratitude, then, is not a celebration after relief. It is a recognition of God before there is any relief to celebrate. We are not to be grateful for any form of good, as if forms could legislate our life, but for the spirit that underlies every form, the presence that is the life of all that lives. If the bank account swells or shrinks, if the pulse steadies or quickens, if the calendar smiles or frowns, spirit remains spirit. Gratitude is our yes to that fact. Gratitude is our consent to the one power. Gratitude says without fanfare, be not afraid. God is. Now, of course, in the human scene, there are moments when relief does come, and to say thank you then is natural and kind, but do not confuse kindness with worship. Let us correct ourselves gently. Our thanks are not a tip for good service rendered by the universe. Our thanks are the homage of the heart to God who is. So, how shall we speak? In the hour of flare, when the nerves rise, when memory runs to its files and pulls out yesterday's evidence, when a clock seems to point and a calendar seems to glare, let this be our turning. I thank you, Father, that you are, that your grace is functioning, that your care is the law of my being. Not, thank you that this will disappear, or thank you that tomorrow will be easier, but thank you that you are. If we can rest there even a breath, we have recentered authority. We have removed the crown from the symptom's head and returned it to the one. Be not afraid. God is. You will notice what this does inside. Fear loves to be the center of the stage. It loves a spotlight and a drumbeat. Gratitude dims the house lights on fear. Gratitude moves the chair of our attention from the middle of the theater to the back pew of the chapel. Gratitude is not denial, it is enthronement. We enthrone the presence, we enthrone the law of love, we enthrone the grace that governs all that concerns us. And when the presence is enthroned in our awareness, fear has no pulpit from which to preach. The argument goes mute, not because we have gagged it with affirmations, but because the room has changed. We abide in the secret place, and the secret place abides in us. Well, someone will say, am I to thank God while the pain is still speaking? Yes, but again, not as a charm to make the speaking stop, as recognition that God is the law of your being, whether the speaking stops or not. I thank you, Father, that you are, that your grace is functioning, that your care is the law of my being. And because gratitude is a form of yielding, not of forcing, You will feel at once the softening that follows every surrender to the real. The breath lengthens, the shoulders settle. The mind, which was standing on tiptoe to peer into tomorrow, remembers that it can sit down. You have not used truth. Truth has used you. And in that atmosphere, wisdom can instruct the next step without panic. I remember a mother who wrote in a night when the child's brow was hot and the house was thick with noise, the noise of a clock that seemed to accuse, the noise of a headline she had read last week, the noise of her own heart. She had learned the mantra and the forgiveness, and now she added this simple thanksgiving, not after the glass cooled in her hand, but while it steamed. I thank you, Father, that you are, that your grace is functioning, that your care is the law of my being and this household. Be not afraid. God is. She did not bargain. She did not count minutes. She sat quietly at the edge of the bed and let gratitude enthrone God in her awareness. She reported later, not to give me credit, for there was none to give, that a hush came over the room, a hush that was not the result of sleep but the presence of peace. Then, in that hush, directions came. A window opened, a cloth refreshed, a call placed without tremor. Before morning the brow had cooled. But mark this, the hush came first. Peace presided before evidence adjusted. Gratitude was not the price paid for recovery. It was the recognition of government before and beyond the report. Another time a man on a highway felt that slip of wheels we have all known, that instant when machinery asserts itself and prophesies calamity. The mouth would have said 1,000 things. Instead, he said inwardly, "Thank you, Father, that you are. Thank you that your order is the law of every motion. Be not afraid. God is." The car found its line. He did not write to say that a miracle of rubber and physics had occurred. He wrote to say that panic found no chair in him that day. He said the longer story was that gratitude had become his first reflex. Fear, when it arrived to an empty theater. So with us it is in proportion as we abide. Now do not parade this. Keep it within. Go and tell no man. These are quiet things. Gratitude shrivels in self-congratulation. Let it be a private incense rising, without display, without advertisement, and let it be daily. Gratitude at dawn, not for coffee and sunshine alone, but for being. Gratitude at noon, not for a schedule that obeys us, but for the life that lives us. Gratitude at night, not for a tally of accomplishments, but for the presence that neither slumbers nor sleeps. You will discover that when the symptom shouts, gratitude is already warmed and ready. It will not need to be manufactured in a storm. In this way, gratitude prevents fear from setting the agenda. We do not watch the thermometer as a priest. We do not consult the clock as an oracle. We consult God. We thank God. We abide in God. And then, very often, because the only leverage fear ever had was our belief, appearances adjust, protection appears, provision appears, the end of panic appears, but we do not link our thanks to these. Our thanks are for spirit, the cause, the life, the law, the love. We are grateful because God is. And that is enough to make a sanctuary in any hour. Be not afraid. God is. Now let us see how all of this walks out into streets and corridors, kitchens and fields. That secret place which poets sang of when they spoke of dwelling under a shadow that shelters, of feathers and wings, of a refuge and a fortress. We are not treating poetry as a charm. We are describing an experience. He that dwelleth, note it, not he that visits, but he that dwelleth abides under a presence that is safety in the very midst of the picture that shouts danger. This is not a promise to personalities. It is a law revealed to consciousness that refuses two powers and rests in one. Be not afraid. God is. A nurse in a city hospital wrote after a night whose alarms seemed to pile on one another. Sirens, doors, codes, the mechanical speech of monitors that try to make themselves authorities. Twice she felt the old surge, hands go cold, mind go narrow, and twice she remembered. No crusade, no strained denial, a breath. Be not afraid, God is. She let the body report, she did not let it rule. She let the machine speak, she did not let it govern. And what followed? Not fireworks, poise. The next right instruction rose unforced. Call here, wait there, speak now, be quiet now. A young man stabilized, an elderly woman passed through a crisis without the theater of panic. She did not write to say that she had discovered a method. She wrote to say that the room changed, the instant the throne changed. Fear stepped down, presence presided. Outwardly, everything necessary was done. Inwardly, the wings were felt. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. In a different scene, a tradesman in a small town faced a Thursday with a Friday payroll and no visible way through. He had figures, he had reasons, he had weather to blame and markets to resent. He also had that morning a stern little temptation to despise himself. If I were wiser, richer, better, you know the recitation. Well, of course, he caught himself at the threshold and did the only thing that returns government to its rightful shoulder. Be not afraid, God is. He forgave the bank manager in his imagination. He forgave the forecast. He forgave himself. And then he gave thanks for spirit before a digit changed. Not as a bargain, as recognition. And then, with panic dislodged, he made 2 calls. Not frantic, not casting nets into the dark, but simple, natural. One call he had resisted out of pride. The other he had delayed out of fear. Before nightfall, enough was in place, but notice the order. The hush came first. Provision arrived into poise. It did not create it. He learned a lesson that has nothing to do with numbers and everything to do with government. There are not 2 powers in this world, as there seems to be. Another writes from a train stalled in a tunnel. Lights dimming, announcements hesitating, that peculiar stillness in which the imagination becomes a bad playwright. A child began to cry. A man began to mutter. The air thickened with what if. She had no pulpit, no audience, no platform, only the same door we all have at any instant, the inner word. Be not afraid, God is. This was not an attempt to manipulate switches or tracks. It was a yielding to the one presence in which fear has no microphone. She said that as her breath joined that sentence, something like a shadowed wing spread in car number 4. Conversations softened. The child's mother remembered a lullaby. A conductor's voice lost its tremor. Minutes later, lights returned. The train moved. The station appeared. She was careful to say she had understood the teaching, that she did not cause the electricity to behave. She allowed no belief in arrival to occupy her awareness, and in that atmosphere life flowed without the obstruction of panic. That is a demonstration, not because the train moved, but because fear did not govern. We have, from time to time, heard from those whose occupations put them at the intersection of risk and duty. I think of a firefighter who carried within him a line he could not quote aloud while climbing stairs into smoke. Under his feathers, under his wing. He had learned not to confuse bravado with dominion. He wrote the mantra on the inside of his mind and wore it like a shield that cannot be seen and therefore cannot be torn. Be not afraid, God is. He made his turns. He kept his team. They came out into daylight. He was plain about it. Equipment worked, training worked, command worked. Not as separate powers, but as instruments in one presence when no other God was acknowledged. He did not send a photograph. He asked that his name not be printed. Go and tell no man. These are quiet things. Do you see the pattern? The sanctuary is not postponed until the storm ceases. The sanctuary is entered while the rain is on the roof. The secret place is not a place of hiding from duty. It is the interior of duty redeemed from fear. In each case, the first response was not strategy, but remembrance. Strategy has its place, but not as a god. Remembrance enthrones God. Then strategy becomes wisdom rather than panic in clothing. We are not collecting stories to polish them like trophies. We are establishing in our own thought that consciousness aligned with one power changes the experience because it changes the governor. Dominion is restored within, and from that center events take their proper measure. Now, someone will say, "But I have said the words and the symptom remained." Remember our rule. Results are secondary. The first fruit is the end of panic. If, in some hour, the pain speaks and continues to speak, while you sit in the shadow of wings, you may still have the demonstration. The demonstration is that you are not ruled, that you do not consult a clock as an oracle, that you do not make a thermometer a priest. You abide. The government is upon his shoulder and you feel it, even if evidence lags. Often evidence follows, sometimes it tarries. In neither case do we change gods. Our gratitude is for spirit, our trust is in one. That is the secret place. I could multiply illustrations, homes where the maw of lack became the table of enough, wards where tempers cooled without words, ships that found a harbor through fog that frightened every sense. But let us keep one caution close. We are never more tempted to believe in two powers than right after we have refused to. You won't be out of this room 5 minutes before some little god will present itself for homage, a headline, a rumor, a twinge. That is the testing that follows the hush. Do not be surprised by it. Do not make it an omen. Let it be your cue. Turn again. Be not afraid. God is. If the old resentment tries for your attention, forgive or ask the Father to forgive as you. If the old habit of transactional praise rises, give thanks for spirit before any report moves. If the body speaks loudly, let it report and keep your bench on the court. No authority ceded, no crown misplaced. And please keep these things private. Not secret out of superstition, but private so that root can go down without being trodden. The more we advertise, the more we invite a theater in which fear would love to audition again. Keep the sanctuary within, build the reflex in silence. It is what you do with this that will produce the change. Abide, moment by moment, not extravagantly, not exhaustingly, but faithfully. We are not trying to make miracles. We are learning to live normally in God, under the shadow of the One, where protection is a presence, provision is a presence, and the end of panic is the first sign that the King is on his throne. So when the symptom shouts, or the market coughs, or a siren splits the night, move your awareness, not in miles but in inches, back under the wing. Dwell, don't visit, say it as you would sit down in a familiar chair. Be not afraid. God is. Then watch, not the clock, but the presence. You will find that life becomes responsive, not because you have exerted personal power, but because you have refused to acknowledge a rival to God. Demonstrations are not prizes. They are the natural fruit of dwelling. And the sweetest fruit, again and again, is the hush that returns, the end of panic, the restoration of spiritual poise. That is safety, that is supply, that is the secret place. Now, let us be very plain about the next 5 minutes after the flare, those early moments when the mind wants to sprint and the body wants to appoint itself governor. We do not run with it. We do not argue with it. We remember God. That is all our authority and all our safety. So the sequence is simple, and because it is simple, you will be tempted to doubt it. Do not doubt. Do it. First, stop the mental race. Literally stop. Let the shoulders fall. Let a breath complete itself. Do not manufacture air. Receive it. In that pause, say within, not with effort, but with recognition, be not afraid. God is. Say it as a man or woman sits down in a familiar chair. Be not afraid. God is. You have just moved the throne. Second, release the need to fix. That impulse is the old religion of two powers. It bids you bargain, it bids you compare, it bids you invent rituals to placate a problem God. Withdraw your belief. Father, I do not know. You are the law of my being. Be not afraid, God is. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. So let yourself be used by it. This is not passivity. This is government restored to its rightful shoulder. In that light, the next step appears as wisdom, not as panic dressed in urgency. Third, forgive, not heroically, simply. If any face rises, if any name presents itself, if your own body stands before your inner court, waiting to be tried, dismiss the court. I release you in God. I release me. Father, forgive them, forgive me. I do not know what I do. Do not strain, do not perform, be real. If you can forgive, forgive. If you cannot, ask the Father to forgive as you and be quiet long enough to feel the stone roll from the stream. Remember, resentment is an oath to a second power. Forgiveness is our consent to one. In those seconds, watch how the air clears inside you. That is not psychology, that is law. Fourth, give thanks for spirit before the report moves. I thank you, Father, that you are, that your grace is functioning, that your care is the law of my being. This is not a tip left on heaven's table to secure better service. It is the enthronement of reality. Gratitude centers awareness where safety lives. The hush may come now or after. Do not watch the clock. Watch the presence. Be not afraid. God is. Fifth, rest. 2 minutes, 3, 5 if they are given. Let the body report but not rule. Let the clock tick but not govern. Let the senses present their case without seating them as judges. You are not inducing a trance. You are staying home. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High abides. He does not peep and run. In that rest, you will notice the first demonstration, the end of panic. Often that is followed by guidance, as natural as a hand reaching for a light switch you've always known was there. Now, of course, as soon as the breath evens, you will feel the sly tug to check and recheck. How is it now? Has it changed yet? What does the clock say? What does the mirror say? What does the screen say? Beloved, notice the device. Compulsive monitoring is worship. Each check reanoints the rival. The thermometer is not a priest. The clock is not an oracle. The screen is not a prophet. When you catch yourself reaching for the shrine of measurement, return to the mantra. Be not afraid, God is. If something humanly necessary must be done, medication to be taken, a call to be placed, a task to be fulfilled, do it as a servant of the one, not as a candidate canvassing votes from many gods. Action from poise is obedience. Action from panic is idolatry. And keep it inward. Go and tell no man. Why? Because the seed is tender in the first minutes after planting, and a crowd of well-meaning advisors can trample a whole field. Collective fear has a voice. It speaks through opinions and urgencies, through advice-seeking hypnosis that seems like comfort and becomes confusion. Let your Father who seeth in secret reward you openly. This is not secrecy out of superstition. It is protection of atmosphere. The more we advertise our flares, the more we build a theater in which fear loves to audition. Keep the sanctuary within. You will find that silence strengthens the root so that when a word is finally needed, it is a word with weight. Let us be equally clear about safety and common sense. Abiding is not recklessness dressed as faith. We render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Locks on doors, care for the body, consultation when wisdom indicates, while never rendering unto Caesar the throne of our consciousness. We do what is humanly necessary without surrendering our government to fear. The Master touched lepers and also walked away from stones. He was not proving points. He was obeying the Father in each moment. So with us it is. From the hush of "Be not afraid, God is," the right outward step appears without bravado and without dread. We move, we rest, we speak, we are silent, under orders that rise from presence, not from panic. If you will hold to this simple sequence in the next 5 minutes after a flare, stop, breathe, be not afraid. God is. Release the need to fix, forgive, give thanks for spirit, rest. You will discover what I have said all along. Our first fruit is the end of panic, and from that fruit many branches grow. Protection, provision, adjustment, wisdom. You will also find that 5 minutes become a way of life. What is practiced in moments becomes character in hours, and character becomes atmosphere. Then, when the next siren splits the night, you do not build an altar. Your heart is already a chapel. We will, in our next step, make this practical over days, not just minutes. A discipline, not a drama. A 30-day experiment in abiding that will train the reflex until remembrance comes before reaction. But it begins here now with one quiet sequence you can actually follow before you stand up from your chair. Do not wait for a better season or a clearer sky. Begin with the breath that is in you. Begin with the word that has been given you. Be not afraid. God is. Now let us make this a way of life, not a momentary relief. We are going to take 30 days, not as a superstition, not as a bargain, but as a sacred experiment in abiding. In those days, we are not going to chase results. We are going to train a reflex. We are going to replace the reflex of fear with the reflex of remembrance. And I can tell you, because it has been proved again and again, that if you embark on a program of daily forgiveness and daily gratitude, anchored in quiet abiding, you will find a change in your life in 30 days, less than 30 days. Not because of the calendar as a god, but because consciousness, consistently inclined to one, bears fruit. Be not afraid. God is. How shall we order the day? Simply, quietly, faithfully. In the morning, before the world hands you its narratives, let God have the first word. 10 minutes, 15 if they are given. Sit, breathe, and without force, without projects, turn within and acknowledge, be not afraid. God is. This is not recitation to make something happen. This is resting in what already is. Abide in the word, and let the word abide in you, which is to say, consent. Father, I am willing for you to be the law of my being. I am willing to let today be governed by the one presence. If you read a line of scripture or a sentence from a writing, let it be as a door opener, not a taskmaster. Then be still. Let the word sit in you as leaven sits in dough. It works without your rattling the bowl. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. So offer yourself to be used. 5 times, softly, inwardly, no strain. Be not afraid, God is. Then sit and listen. If nothing seems to speak, do not force a voice. The silence itself is speech when it is saturated with presence. At midday, and this is the practice that teaches the body and mind to look up rather than out. Pause for 1 minute, once at noon, twice if you can, 3 times if you dare. Wherever you are, in a hall or a shop, at a desk or a sink, withdraw your belief from appearances, not by hating them or arguing with them, but by remembering there are not 2 powers. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father. Then the mantra again, quiet, exact, not addressed to a problem but to your own awareness. Be not afraid, God is. This is how we keep the throne rightly occupied throughout the day. Fear makes many small bids for our allegiance, a headline, a tone in someone's voice, a twinge, a number on a screen. Each bid is an invitation to forget God for a moment and believe in a second power. Our 1-minute pauses are refusals of that invitation. We do not debate. We do not dramatize. We step back under the wing. In the evening, we cleanse. This is the house cleaning that keeps the channels open. Sit again for 10 minutes. Let the day rise in memory as if each scene were a leaf on a slow river. If any name or face comes with a sting, release it. If you cannot, ask the Father to forgive as you. Father, forgive them, forgive me, I do not know what I do. You are not making something right with human will. You are consenting to the divine quality of forgiveness to dissolve the obstruction. Then give thanks, not for outcomes, not for a list of today's wins and losses, but for spirit. I thank you, Father, that you are, that your grace is functioning, that your care is the law of my being. Gratitude enthrones God for the night as remembrance enthroned God for the morning. Close where you opened, be not afraid. God is. Go to sleep under wings. Keep this private, go and tell no man. Why? Because roots grow best without foot traffic overhead. The first days are tender, let them be. Do not compare your practice. Do not ask advice of every passerby. Do not report on your inner garden as if it were a weather map. Let your Father who seeth in secret reward you openly. The reward will be seen as an atmosphere, not a performance. Now, how shall we measure this experiment without turning it into commerce? Not by talking to clocks and thermometers as priests, but by noticing the climate within. Here is your metric. Are you less reactive? Do you return to peace more quickly when startled? Do you find that the old spirals, those mental whirlpools that used to demand an afternoon, now lose their suction after a few breaths? Are you less tempted to dramatize? Do you discover that guidance appears and with it, simple right action without the theater of panic? These are the first fruits. Then very often outward harmonizing follows. Conversations ease, provisions come. The body finds a quieter law. We do not make a God of these changes. We note them as byproducts of government restored to one power. The aim is not trophies. The aim is abiding. Prepare for resistance. The mind will argue, it cannot be this simple. You should be doing more. The body will clamor, listen to me, I am the governor. The world will volunteer alarming narratives precisely at noon, and precisely when you are due for your minute. Well, of course. You won't be out of this room 5 minutes, I have often said, before some little God will present itself for homage. That is not a failure of your practice. That is the curriculum. Each temptation is merely another opportunity to say, without drama, be not afraid, God is, and return to your seat. The very moment you notice you have wandered, you are already halfway home. Return. We are training a reflex. Do not confuse consistency with strain. If one morning is thin, do not punish yourself. Do the next morning. If noon slips by unmarked, take 3 breaths at 2 o'clock and call it noon. This is not a burden. This is oxygen. We are not adding religion to a crowded day. We are remembering life as the day itself. And do not be heroic in public. If a word is needed aloud, let it be ordinary. Let your sanctuaries be inward, your changes quiet, your discipline steady. Abide in the word, and let the word abide in you. In that reciprocal indwelling, fruit comes of itself. Health, harmony, wholeness, completeness, perfection, infinite good. Not because we chanted correctly, but because we refused to divide God into a majority stakeholder among many powers. If during these 30 days a practical step is required, take it without fear. Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and keep the throne of consciousness for God alone. Action from poise is obedience. Action from panic is idolatry. You will learn to feel the difference. One rises out of hush, simple and unforced. The other bursts out of dread. Choose hush. The Master moved that way, and so with us it is, in proportion, as we dwell in God. At the end of your 30 days, you may keep a quiet note to yourself. Not a scorecard, just a remembrance. This is what I noticed. Less reactivity, quicker peace, fewer spirals, guidance, a softening. Perhaps an adjustment appeared in the outer scene. Smile, give thanks for spirit, and close the book. Do not turn your experiment into a shrine. Turn it into a life. Most will not need a new program after 30 days, because by then remembrance has begun to come before reaction. That is the whole point. When the next siren sounds, you will not rush to build an altar. Your heart will already be a chapel. So, will you take the 30 days? Quiet mornings consenting to presence, midday moments withdrawing belief from appearances, evening cleansing in forgiveness and gratitude. Keep it simple, keep it faithful, keep it private, and in less than 30 days, you will know for yourself that abiding is not a theory, it is a government. The reflex of fear loosens, the reflex of remembrance strengthens, and then in any hour words return that are not a slogan but a sanctuary. Be not afraid. God is. Beloved, we have come a long way, only to arrive at the one simple place we were aiming for from the first word. There are not two powers in this world as there seems to be. When the symptom shouts, when the world shakes, we do not argue with the body. We remember God. We withdraw belief from a rival and abide in the one presence. That is the whole path, reduced without loss, concentrated without strain, and it has been our lesson in every angle. Be not afraid. God is. Fear gets its borrowed authority by persuading us that something outside the one can govern our peace, our health, our supply, our safety. The instant we grant that premise, we are off to the races, strategizing, bargaining, measuring, oscillating between hope and dread. Dominion returns at the point where we refuse the premise, not by a noisy battle with sensation, but by enthroning God as the only government of our being. Then, quite naturally, the senses can report without being seated as judges. The clock can tick without being consulted as an oracle. The body can speak without being made a deity. We are not trying to make something happen. We are consenting to what always is. God is. You have in your hand 3 quiet supports, and they are sufficient. First, the mantra as sanctuary, not a slogan. In the very moment of alarm, say within, gently, truly, be not afraid. God is. Not to hypnotize the body, not to bully the mind, but to sit down again in the familiar chair of one presence. Second, forgiveness as law, not sentiment. If resentment rises, if blame circles, forgive if you can, and if you cannot, let the Father forgive as you. Every release removes the inner obstruction through which grace would flow. By not cleansing ourselves of these emotions, we withhold forgiveness, and in withholding forgiveness, we withhold the love of God from our own doorway. Third, gratitude for spirit, not outcomes. We are not to be grateful for any form of good, but for the spirit which underlies that form. We thank the Father that He is before a number moves, before a symptom softens, because gratitude enthrones God and frees us from worshiping the report. Now, of course, some of us will forget this test before we reach the parking lot. You won't be out of this room 5 minutes, I have often said, before some little God will present itself for homage. That is the curriculum, not a failure. We will be tempted again, we will forget again, and we will remember again. Each return strengthens the reflex of remembrance and weakens the reflex of fear. There is no perfectionism in this way, only fidelity. If you find yourself halfway through a spiral and suddenly the word God is breaks in, do not scold yourself for the minutes lost. Give thanks that remembrance arrived and sit down in it. The very moment you notice you have wandered, you are already on your way home. Keep it private, go and tell no man, not as secrecy born of superstition, but as protection of holy atmosphere. Roots go deeper in quiet soil, Let your sanctuaries be inward. Let your changes be quiet. Let your discipline be steady. Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Take the step that wisdom indicates, care for the body as an instrument, while never rendering unto Caesar the throne of consciousness. Action from poise is obedience. Action from panic is idolatry. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. Therefore, enter the morning consenting to be used. Pause at noon to withdraw belief from appearances. Cleanse at night with forgiveness and gratitude, and let the word abide in you as you abide in the word. Do not make a theater of demonstrations. The first fruit, again and again, is the end of panic. From that fruit grows protection, provision, guidance, adjustment, health, harmony, wholeness, completeness, perfection, infinite good, not as trophies to be displayed, but as the natural harvest of dwelling. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High abides. He does not visit and run. When the winds rattle the shutters of the senses, our house does not tremble if the cornerstone is the one. The government is upon his shoulder, and to feel that government is safety, to abide under that wing is supply, to live by that remembrance is peace. So I would leave you with nothing new to carry, only the treasure we have already opened together. When symptoms flare, when headlines shout, when a loved one's voice quivers, when your own heart skips and wants to sprint, do not run with it. Sit down inwardly and let the throne be set. Say it without haste, without bargain, without theater. Be not afraid. God is. If forgiveness is needed, forgive or ask the Father to forgive as you. If gratitude is needed, and it always is, give thanks for spirit before any report changes. Then rest, if only for a minute, under the wing whose shadow you have learned to trust. Father, we thank Thee that Thou art, that Thy presence is the law of our being, that Thy grace is the activity of our experience. We consent to be instruments, transparencies, not mechanics of miracles. Cleanse in us what resists. Remove from us the worship of rivals. Establish in us the quiet reflex of remembrance. Let our mornings begin in Thee, our noons return to Thee, our nights close in Thee. And let the world, as it will, rise and fall, while within we dwell and move and have our being in God. Now go quietly, keep it faithful, keep it private, and when the next hour asks for a God, let there be no audition. Let there be only the inner word that has become your home. Be not afraid. God is. Thank you. Bless you.